to our latest American Mussar community gathering. It is a pleasure to see you and happy Halloween to everyone. I thought about wearing my big blonde wig today, but I was busy and didn't have time to dig it out. We'll get started the way we always do with a short meditation. So I invite you to relax and close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding, if thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them pass, like watching a car pass by on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems or for planning. All you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, hello again, everyone. This week is a little bit of a aberration in that we're not going to move on from gratitude. We are going to practice gratitude for a third week, and who knows, maybe we'll even practice it for a fourth week. But it's been kind of fun to go deep in this subject. So that's where we're going to go today. Okay. So in our first meeting, we discussed the relationship of an abundant mindset and how appreciating what we have makes it easier to practice chesed towards others. And last week, we spent a lot of time discussing whether you could ever have too much gratitude. And also, we had this theme of kind of opening a space to linger, like Shmini Atzeret, the eighth day of um, Sukkot, this holiday where God like invites us to linger a little bit more time. So for today, we'll open with a question that can kind of be related to both of those. It's when are you enough? I think some of us, many of us have felt at times like we don't feel like we're enough or in some particular situations, but let's think about like when is it that we feel like we're enough? It's okay, I'm enough in this circumstance. So let's all think about that for a sec. And then when you're ready, you can raise your hand, and I'd love to um, hear from you. Yes, Frank.
That's easy. Um, I listen to too much news, and so I realize it, and I just have a news fast
Hmm.
where I just, in the morning I refuse to,
Okay.
put an NPR on. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. So that's a time when you're kind of setting a boundary where that's enough. Who else? When do you feel like you are enough? Wendy.
Well, I feel like I'm enough right now, but I
Okay.
don't always feel like I was enough in the past.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'll bring that into the present and have to deal with it. So I don't really feel like I'm not enough now, but and I can see some things in the past that I was not.
Hmm. Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, Beth.
Um, my mother had rather a strong personality, and I like to think mine is a watered down version of hers.
Hmm.
And I know that sometimes people had too much of her, and I think sometimes they have too much of me. And so I'm not sure that I've ever thought about when I was enough, but I have thought about when I was too much.
Hmm.
Is that the same thing or the opposite, or am I even in the ballpark?
Well, there's no right or wrong answers to any of this, but I'm kind of intentionally turning that question around because it's easy for us to kind of think about when, oh, I wasn't enough, or maybe I was too much, or whatever. And that kind of feeling enough, I suspect, is kind of elusive.
Okay, okay, thank you.
There's also this concept in Mussar and Judaism of wholeness as kind of being one of our goals. And we could spend all day talking about, well, what might that mean? But today we're talking about being enough. Yes, Michael.
Looking at this, I don't know that I was raised by perfectionists. I struggle with this every minute of every single day. And if I can get even 1 minute of feeling enough, that feels like an enormous, enormous victory. The only times when that happens are when I meditate, and I actually have a morning meditation that I have on my phone that actually has those words over and over again as I breathe in, you are, breathe out, enough. Just doing
Mm,
that as a way to try to get my day started right. But gosh, that's elusive for me.
yeah. Thank you, Michael. I'm listening with an open heart. Marjorie.
No, I tend to be somebody who I'm pretty verbal, I'll start talking about something and I could go on and on. Or if there's an activity or an event or something that needs to be planned, I tend to rather than call on others, it's like, okay, they're not doing it the way I want it, or nobody's stepping up, so I just step up. I've learned to take a pause
Mm,
and just say, okay, I have done enough. If things don't get done a certain way, that is not on me anymore. I've done what I feel is enough for my perimeter.
mm. Thank you.
Bertie.
Yeah, sometimes we just got to say, you know what? I've done enough. It's not like it's not like a measuring cup, 2 cups. All right, the water's up to the line. There is no 2 cup line for most stuff that we're engaged with. Shelley.
So I like how you worded that. What does enough mean to us? Right. And I think a lot of the times we're not truly being authentic because we all have those moments when something happens or somebody does something and we want to speak out, but we don't. And we don't have enough courage. Enough is a word that can be applied to so much. Do you have enough love? Do you love yourself enough? Right. And I think it's really how we speak to ourselves and also how we attempt to control the situation that we're in because we per se believe we have an idea that we can give to somebody and we're trying to expand their mindset, but sometimes you have to pull back from yourself as well and recognize, okay, I've said all I can say, I've done all I can do, and I'm okay with that. instead of beating myself up and saying, oh, I could have done more, I could have done more. We always can do more. We always can be more positive and more loving, I live my day by that now, to be so mindful of taking every situation I'm in and finding the positive, because that's how you get through chaos. So that's.
Thank you. Thank you, Shelley. Yeah, yeah, I love that. Okay, we'll hear from Paul and then from Toby.
So, yeah, this is a really interesting question. And I was puzzled at first about, I thought I knew what it meant, and then I wasn't sure. And so I think that uh, I think for me, the boundary that I was crossing all the time was um, trying to always help other people, whether they wanted it or not. And I didn't know when enough was enough for a long time. I mean, for most of my life, actually.
Mhm.
Um, and I thought that, you know, by me doing that, that was me being the best that I could be. And I think, through being in a 12-step program and meditation and being with all you folks for such a long time, plus being retired from work, so I don't have that daily kind of thing going on, that I've started to, especially with Carrie, who will be joining us not too long from now, but to simply offer my assistance if she needs it, because I think that was she was the canary in the coal mine, or that experience with her was like, if I was overbearing, then it became clear that, okay, I had to really back off. And that's kind of the saying that sort of brings in the soul trait of humility as well, I think.
Yeah.
When am I enough in terms of when am I taking up too much space or not? So in some ways, being enough as far as being okay, and also being enough by taking up the right amount of space, they sort of coincide with each other for me. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
the question.
Paul. There's so many different angles to this enoughness, and I'm really glad for the ones that you brought in. And I was listening, but I couldn't help but think, oh, it's like she's your Carrie in the coal mine. And so, and I also can't help but saying, however much time she is here, it will be enough. Um, so Toby, I saw your hand, and then Bonnie.
I'm not sure if imposter syndrome is part of this. It seems like it is because as a new lawyer, I was thrown into this. When you graduate from law school, you think that you're prepared to, go into the courtroom and be, I don't know what, but
Be Perry Mason.
be Perry Mason or whatever. Any visual that you get from Law and Order or whatever.
Yeah.
And I knew nothing. And I stood around while I had my first cases, and I stumbled over everything and had no idea what I was doing. And I felt like I must be here by mistake because I have no clue as to what's going on. And then, you get over that after a period of time. And then when I converted to Judaism, I went through the whole process of like, well, I'm not really a Jew. I'm just a fake Jew, or I'm partially Jewish, because I never went to Hebrew school, and I never went to camp, and I never did all of those things. And, everybody always tells you, no, converts are, you're considered part of the tribe and all this. But I couldn't help but feel that I had missed such a large part of my Jewish heritage, that I started having that imposter syndrome thing all over again. And I'm wondering if that's just a character trait, that maybe we should add that to our midot, like imposter syndrome, or if that's just me, or what that's about. But it seems to me to have something to do with being enough or feeling enough feeling that you are enough or whatever. So I thought I would share that, Debarty.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm listening with an open heart. I think it'd be a great idea just for one session, we talk about imposter syndrome, because I wouldn't call that a soul trait, but there's an awful lot of soul traits that feed into that. And they can lead to that. And it's very relevant to what we're talking about today, is that's very much, I'm definitely not enough. I can't be enough. I'm an imposter here. It's a mistake that I'm here. Bonnie.
So I have the privilege of being a member of two synagogues. And I've been at the conservative synagogue for, it'll be 50 years next in 2025. And then I joined the Reform synagogue up the road in 2018. So most of my time is in the conservative synagogue, but this year I decided to spend 3 parts of the Chagim at the Reform synagogue. And Rabbi Nemitov, who is our interim senior rabbi, gave a drash on Kol Nidre that just had so much meaning for me. And he talked basically about making yourself smaller, not that you're insignificant, but that others can be in the room also. And it had it just connected for me. And last week in Mussar, I listened and I did not speak up, I think, until probably the very end. I spoke up in the breakout session, but I didn't speak up and gratitude is so important to me. I have a gratitude journal, and I write in it as soon as I have, hopefully write in it more often than I think I do, but I write in it 3 things every day. And it gave me a mirror to be able to, this group gave me an opportunity to try his suggestion. And so it just rang so true for me. I don't have to be in it. I can be in it and let somebody else be in it also. I can be enough.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Bonnie, for sharing that. I've been thinking, Margie, and then I have some thoughts, but I will let everybody else speak.
I just think of the Hebrew word hineni, which is I am here. Which is, I also think of it as meaning I'm enough. This is, I'm here, I'm doing what I can do. That word just popped into my mind listening to some of these comments. So
yeah,
it's a great word.
It is. It shows up very important times in the Torah, like, when God is speaking to someone and it's like, Abraham, Hineni, or Isaac speaking to Abraham, Hineni, I am here 100%. Yeah, and I really like that, because I think implicitly, if you're here fully present, it's implicitly you're enough. If you don't feel like you're enough, you're going to be all anxious and you can't be in that Hineni moment. I've been thinking a lot about, as I've been listening to you in this conversation, is something that my mother said to me, and it was the last couple of years of my grandfather's life, and I was very close with them. And she said to me, kind of out of the blue, I want you to know that you've done enough for your grandparents. You call them, you visit them. After they're gone, I don't ever want you to feel like you should have done more, or you could have been more, and that's brought a lot of comfort. That brought a lot of comfort to me, like after the fact. And from my training as a grief counselor, like part of that, I could have done more, I wish I'd done more, is part of kind of the bargaining piece, trying to gain control or trying to wish we could have changed the outcome. And I still to this day just look back with so much love and fondness at that relationship. And it really was enough. And it was really nice and special. And it was amazing of my mom to say that to me and to have the foresight to say that to me. It was about her parents, as probably would be implied. So, okay, well, let's go. Thank you all so much. That was really, really awesome. Let's go a little bit deeper. So again, as a reminder, gratitude, hakarat hatov, it's recognizing the good. And I feel like, okay, if you're feeling enough, it's part of that is implicit gratitude, recognizing the good in who I am and what I've done and what I've contributed. I think that there's a clear connection there. We talked last week again about this spectrum of gratitude, too much, too little. So we're going to go in a new direction today. We're going to bring in another idea. And we don't go through the assumptions anymore, but we have this assumption in American Mussar practice that we are kind of driven by this conflict between the good inclination and the evil inclination. And sometimes, especially in the classic uh, Mussar literature, the evil inclination is almost personified as like an external force. And so that's kind of what's going on here. But it's also like, we can think of as the devil on one shoulder, the angel on the other, our selfish impulses versus our generous impulses. So a little background on the evil inclination. So can someone unmute and kind of read this first bullet, please? Out loud would be preferred.
I can read.
Thank you, Carrie.
When everything is going well, the Yetzer Ha'Ra, the evil inclination, will say to you, it is the result of your own effort, ingenuity, and cleverness. You should therefore continue to exert yourself in your secular affairs and labor hard in them in order to maintain your present standard and even rise, for soon you will be in your grave where there will be no pleasure or pain. Bachya, I can't pronounce all that stuff.
It's Ibn Pakuda, Bachya ibn Pakuda. Yes. So it was, this book was written in Judeo-Arabic. So that's kind of Ibn is the Arabic version of Ben, meaning son of. So he was Bachya, son of Pakuda. All right. So I'm going to stop the share and then I'm going to put this in the chat because this is a little bit longer a passage. And so my question to go with this is, well, how does this relate to gratitude? But first, before we get to that level, let's just make sure we can know what Ibn Pakuda was talking about. And do we really understand the point that he was making? Let's see if you can relate to this idea. So does someone want to give it an attempt? Yeah, Bonnie, what is
I don't like this at all.
okay.
I just reacted. So in my mind, it was, well, you can never just sit back and look and see what you've done. You just have to keep going and going and going and going because the next step is going to be the grave. No, enjoy. There's no part in here that says you did a good job. Step back for a minute, look at it, enjoy it.
Yeah, so to clarify, this is what the Yetzer Ha'Ra, the evil inclination, is telling us. So it's sort of like, yeah, it's just like keep going. Oh, you've been successful. Great. Keep going. Keep doing more because, someday you're going to be out of time and you're not going to be able to kind of, have these worldly pleasures. Yeah, what else? What else is anyone here? I mean, as a recovering workaholic, I've certainly felt that, that, oh, you got to keep going, you got to keep doing more. Marjorie.
In Kabbalah, the Yetzer Ha'Ra is defined as not the evil inclination so much as more of the animal instinct. Like there are certain instincts that we do have, like, well, to survive and to eat and to, just the very basics.
Yes.
So those can get out of bounds. No, I have to reread. Now, how did that relate to what your quote is, though? And of course, I just immediately go to, well, when was this all written? you know, you have to look at when this person wrote this and who
Love
wrote
it.
it, and how does that relate to where I am today. That's the only thing about Mussar that I've always found a little like, oh my God, these ancient writers who are all men, no offense. Um, um, but yeah, that's just where I draw on the Yetzer Ha'Ra is not so much my evil inclinations, but how certain necessities can get put into overdrive. And yeah, I think it's okay to draw back, to just relax
Mhm.
and enjoy certain things.
Yeah,
You
so
have
thank you. I'm glad you added that because that's definitely part of the picture. And as you said, when it get out of balance, if we're driven by our survival instincts, that's where we can kind of get into trouble. But if we don't pay any attention to them, we also can get into trouble. So it's not like we want to get rid of it. Okay, hear from a couple more people, and then I want to point out a spot we haven't talked about yet. So first from Shelley, and then from Wendy, and then from Beth, and then Michael.
Perfect. So I read somewhere the other day that we have 196 generations. So when you think back how far that was and what was going on in that time frame and how people were surviving, it's kind of like the little whisper game where somebody whispers love, and then by the end of the thing, it's no longer love, it's little. So you got to think about that's how we're imprinted from way back, right? But it's all been changed, and maybe we had some generations where it was love, and other generations there was self-worth. But it also comes down to just even our subconscious things that we don't even think about, like putting on our shoes and our pants and stuff, how we go about doing it every day. So those are all subconscious imprints from our childhood because our mother taught us to put our pants on this way. And, when it comes to gratitude, to be able to reflect on that and go, okay, I have all these belief systems that I created because of my childhood. And I can actually be grateful to see what they went through and how they changed that bit of trauma. And now I'm at a place where I can change the trauma and understand it from variable degrees and also help my children who I have imprinted self-worthlessness on. And so going through that right now with my oldest child is so amazing because when he talks that he's not good enough, and yet he is the most kind, loving man. He's the custodian and maintenance guy of a local church, and they love him, and they made the job for him. But he doesn't see his self-worth. And so, it's interesting how we can be grateful for outside things, but not grateful for the things that we actually have accomplished in our life too. And, it's really reflecting and recognizing that we all have the ability and to be able to transform ourselves to finding joy and bliss and happiness in every moment, because you can, even when it's chaos, even when there's terrible things happening, you can say, okay, there's something always a little bit positive that you can find to turn it around. And that's what I'm always grateful for, that we have the capacity as humans to look into our inside of us and to have insight and learn something about ourselves and question and not try to control the other person, because that's kind of how we've been brought up. We got to control, we have a better idea, and realistically everybody has to come to their point of view when they come to their point of view.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you. Well said. Wendy.
Well, I'm putting myself right in here and trying to figure this out. And so I'm thinking if I wrote a grant and it was granted, then I might have this at least a moment or two thinking, oh, look what I did. But I know better than that. So I know that I have a lot of people to be grateful for, and to be grateful to the Creator for even giving me the brain to be able to figure things out, and even showing me where to go to find something information. But this little guy, this little evil inclination guy, is trying to get me to focus on myself And I'm not going to have much confidence actually when I do that. And I'm going to want to keep going and going and going and doing more. And I think that this is taking us out of the present and making us move on into the future really fast. Don't wait. Just go because it's all you. I think that's kind of a dangerous place to be in myself.
Thank you, Wendy. And I right before you started talking, I cut and pasted just the first sentence. And if I had to do again, I would probably just share that because that's, where I wanted to, where my thoughts were. And that's kind of where you went, things are going really well. And like this part of us is like, well, that's all you. That is all you. Okay, Beth.
Well, I was kind of going to go where Wendy went, that you can be, can have a job and be doing everything right, and things can go right, but they can also go wrong, even though it's no fault of your own. I mean, hundreds of Israelis had businesses that were going great on October 6th, and on October 7th, they were in the dumper. Through no fault of their own. And when things go right, it's mostly Hashem. And when they go wrong, it can be our fault, but it can also be Hashem there too, because he knows he has something better for us. So good points were made all around that, this is the Yetzer Ha'Ra, and it is pointing us back toward ourselves, which is a very bad place to be. But it's never entirely up to us.
Thank you, Beth. And then we'll hear from Michael in a second. And I think it's great that you brought Hashem into this, because that is certainly where, like, Ibn Pakuda went after this. It was like, yeah, well, you should tell them that, I am grateful to the divine for all of the gifts that have come my way. Michael.
Yeah, the word that popped into my head was ego. And that's what it feels like. It's the result of my own effort, ingenuity, and cleverness. Well, it's not, because those are gifts that I get from God, not from myself. And the other phrase that caught my attention was, you should exert yourself in your secular affairs, which implies, or maybe not even implies, actually says, the more you indulge your ego, the less you are working on your soul, and the less you're working on your relationship with God, with your higher power, however you imagine that. So it feels like this is drawing that it's almost saying, if you want your soul to live, your ego is going to have to die a bunch.
Yeah, and I would add to I love what you said, and I would add to that, even if we just look at it from a humanistic standpoint, the more your ego's in play, the less you're noticing your teammates and your community and your family and all of these other pieces that are pieces of the puzzle. Joanne, hey, nice to see you.
Hi, thanks. I've been in a very off-kilter place lately. But what I wanted to comment on about October 7th, I believe I read this in Hadassah magazine. Zionist, women's Zionist organization. There were a group of women whose job in the army was to keep an eye on, I might have said this before, to keep an eye on the security fence. And they saw Hamas like marching, I don't know, doing drilling or doing something, doing drills. They knew something was up. And they told their commanders, who were mostly men, and decided to totally ignore it and did not elevate this to anyone. And a lot of these women were murdered because they were unprotected, or even though the guys who were on duty in army posts who who tried to protect them, but they weren't able to. But because they weren't believed. And so this has nothing to do with gratitude. It's just believe the women, for crying out loud. And that's ego. That's ego. That's male ego. Oh, well, who's going to pay any attention to these women? It's only their job to watch this border and tell us if anything's going on. It is, and nobody looked into it. So I'm sorry. So this is where I'm coming from today. Not a very good place, but listen to everyone, the women, the men, the children, the whoever. It's supposed to be minding the store. Take their word for it if they tell you.
Yeah, thank you, Joanne. I'm
That's
listening
it.
with an open heart, and I'm feeling a lot of the pain that you're feeling, and I know that other people
yeah.
on this issue, and it's a really dire example of what happens when we're not listening or paying attention to like the greater world. And if we think that, we know better than everybody else and it's all, terrible things can happen.
Excuse me.
Well, this is a good place to move into our breakout rooms because I have a complimentary question. You may notice there's another quote on this slide, which I've just moved to their discussion group slide. Someone want to read this quote, please?
Gratitude is not just a nice gesture or worthy personal quality. It is a real obligation, like any other in the code of law. If you withhold it, you are a thief. Oh, interesting. Do you agree that gratitude is an obligation?
So on the one hand, we had, 11th century rabbi talking about this thing of the Yetzer Ha'Ra, making it think like it's all us, which is ego, which is an inherent lack of gratitude. And here Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz is saying it is obligatory to be grateful. And if you're not grateful, you're a thief.
I agree.
I'm saying this. Yes, Joanne.
Okay, so a good friend of mine, he's in Jewish education for maybe 50 years now. He's the principal of a school in Jersey. And one of the things that he always taught, if you don't say the bracha on food or whatever, which is really gratitude, thank you for providing me with this food, with this drink, with this fruit, with this vegetable, whatever, that you're stealing from God if you don't do that. So that's where he agrees with Yerucham. You're a thief. You're not, acknowledging the creator of this thing you're enjoying. Okay.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. That's a good example. All right, let me just take a look at these. Okay, I think we are good. I'm going to open the rooms. Again, do you agree that gratitude is an obligation? And then, like, if you treated it as an obligation, like I certainly had never thought of it as an obligation, what might it look like in your life? What might that change? What about Hesed? Is that an obligation? What might change in your life? So the rooms are open.
In a certain
That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
We're works in progress.
Hey, everyone, welcome back. I suspect there could have been more time for these conversations, but I wanted to have more time for us to discuss as a group because I'm really interested in this question. What might it be like if I treat gratitude as an obligation? What might it be like if Chesed's an obligation? So what you may have talked about those things, you may have talked about something else, but I'd love to kind of share out from some of the groups and see where that brings us.
Mm.
Yes, Mary.
Oh, mentioned in our group that parents, at least my mother and my kids, started at a very early age to get their kids to say thank you. And at first it's with sign before they can talk, and then verbally. So I do think it's an obligation, and it makes children aware that they're being given something, and they may not be given something. They need to say thank you or appreciate it. Make note of it.
Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, starting early with the kids.
I don't even know when my son learned to be polite because he wasn't for a long time. But I figure it's from hanging out with other kids and their parents had a good influence. That's my theory. Yes, please. Oh, really? Where did that come from? It's a miracle. There's another of Hashem's miracles.
I always think it's so cute when I like go out with my now young adult kids and they're ordering boba and they still say, "May I please have the, green tea, passion fruit with lychee jelly?" And it's always, "May I
God.
please have."
Oh, I drove them crazy at Starbucks today. Can we add some more coffee? Can we add some more milk? Actually, I added a shot of espresso. I hadn't paid for that, but it's all right.
Thank you. Okay, who else would like
We
to
can have our
report?
standards. I don't know.
Is there
I
anything you'd
think
like
it's an
to share?
obligation,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes you aware,
Yeah.
It's like just finding something I thought I meant in this place. Oh, there it is. And I thank God for that too. Thank you, Hashem.
Thanks, Joanne. Okay, I saw Frank, your hand was up first, and then we'll go to Wendy and Paul.
I think that I mean for a second I kind of imagined tribal communities, and that's where that's where we come from. The nuclear family is a modern idea. And so our religion, teaches us that it's Klal Israel, and we are part of it. And it's through gratitude and the practice of that we build community. And in the absence of that, it's not very good. We have basically loneliness. You have all kinds of problems, mental health problems, addictive problems. So it's through community and so those wise men, and I imagine their wives knew that this is important.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that you uplifted that it's really a critical pillar of creating community is gratitude. Yeah, thank you. Wendy.
Well, we both agreed that both gratitude and hesed are actually obligations. I won't go into why unless you guys want to, but I just want to thank Carrie for saying thank you and teaching thank you, because I'm a quintessential rule follower. And so it's so easy. It makes things easier if you're told this is what you have to do first, then you can make your mind up. And so that every time you come up to something, the first thought is gratitude. If it's an obligation, because you're obligated. I mean, that's if you're a rule follower. Otherwise, I don't know. But Yeah, we decided that the two things were obligations.
Thank you. I'm gonna turn it. So we've talked about, a number of us have talked about saying thank you, and that's expressing gratitude. Now, we also earlier talked about gratitude as being recognizing the good. So is that an obligation? Are we obliged to recognize the good? And if we treated it as such, again, what might that look like? Because it's easy to have a rule to say thank you, but I'm like, yeah, that is a good rule, and I try to follow that. But can I really kind of recognize the good as an obligation, Paul?
Yeah. So with our grandkids, they're a perfect example. There are plenty of times, especially if we go over on Friday nights, it's the end of the week, and they're both of our grandkids are, one is 7, the other one is 4, and they're just like letting everything loose, and it's just a bit of a chaos. Yeah, very high energy, and it's really hard to see the good in those moments. And one thing I had noticed the parents doing is that, when they did do something, they would call that out. And I thought, that is such a great idea. I mean, I'm clearly that's an idea, it's been around for a long time, but I started to do that. And it's so easy to be critical in my mind. But just because they're not acting out, and that doesn't mean I can just relax. It means it's an opportunity for me to give them that feedback, because then they know, okay, it's a good thing. So I think calling out the good that's one example of it. I'm sure there are others.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a whole parenting philosophy. You need to watch your kids like hawks to catch them doing something good and then praise them for it. Okay, so we have only about a minute left, so we're going to need to go speed round here. So we'll start with Beth.
I'm a fan of period historical movies like Jane Austen kind of things, and they talk differently in those movies. And someone will give you a cup of tea, and instead of saying thank you or even just shake your hand, they'll say, how kind of you, or it's very good of you. And by paying attention to those movies, it helped me learn some new ways to show gratitude and call out the good.
Thank you. Thank you. Go Jane Austen movies. Wendy.
Well, I'm thinking of the Yetzer Ha'Ra as being that little voice when something happens, maybe to hurt you or is not quite in line with what you want. The little voice will say, how did that make you feel? And then all of a sudden you're wanting to fall negative. And then maybe you go negative, and then maybe you wake up the next morning and the Yetzer Tov says, can you see anything good in that? Anything positive in this? And then you can be thankful for it. I think that's how you let that Yetzer Ha'Ra in, is listening to it.
Yeah. Thank you. And Marjorie, you get the last word tonight.
Really quickly, I always think of the old quote, kill them with kindness. Even with, when somebody is not nice, or I use the Yiddish term in our group, broigus, which means you're crabby, you're not having a good day. You still thank them. You just still, you do what you know is what I do, what I know is right, what I think is right. And sometimes you take people by surprise, but I feel better knowing that I've done the right thing, and I'm trying to recognize that, the divine spark in somebody. That's all.
Thank you. Well, that's a great example of why it can be an advantage to make it an obligation. It's like, okay, do I really feel like thanking this crabby person? Not really, but it's an obligation, because even though they were crabby, they helped me. So I'm going to do it. And then all of a sudden the energy gets a little more positive. Great way to to end today. So we're going to do a very short meditation. So once again, relax and close your eyes. And I'm going to read a short poem by Marcia Falk. Sleep descending on my lids, on my limbs. I call to mind the gifts of the day, the gift of this day, and give thanks. Spend a moment of just gratitude for all of us who have chosen to spend this hour together, for listening with open hearts, for sharing from the heart, and for showing up. That is enough. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. I will just say, I never know, like, if people, how many people watch to the end of the recordings on YouTube, but if you have watched to the end of the recording, thank you. Thank you for watching to the end.